Hello, viewer. Just a quick note before the episode starts. I'm sorry for any mispronunciation because I'm not too good at that, and I'm not the best reader ever. So, um, if you can get over that, then there's a little lore episode you might enjoy, and I plan to make more of these if you want. Let me know in the comments below if you like more of these episodes. So, without further ado, here we go. Hello, viewer. Welcome to my first bonus episode of Skyrim. Lydia's sitting down there enjoying a meal. What these bonus episodes are meant to do is I'm gonna sit here and read a book, some of the books I find that I think look interesting, and if you're interested in this, go ahead and watch this, but you don't have to watch this. This might be boring for some of you, so that's why I'm not making these part of the official Skyrim series I'm doing, and it's just gonna be a bonus episode. So just decided to take a seat here and let's read a book. Um, if you want, you can skip this episode, no problem at all. And there was that one book we got. It's called Words and Philosophy. So let's read this. Lady Binak's Words and Philosophy. Lady Elena Binak, former master of the Valenwood Fighters Guild and head of the Emperor's personal guard in the Imperial City, has been leading a campaign to reacquaint the soldiers of Tamriel with the sword. I met her there on 3 different occasions for the purpose of this book. The first time was at her suite in the palace, on the balcony overlooking the gardens below. I was early for the interview, which had taken me nearly 6 months to arrange, but she gently chided me for not being even earlier. I've had time to put up my defenses now, she said, her bright green eyes smiling. Lady Binak is Bosmer and a wood elf, and like her ancestors, took to the bow in her early years. She excelled at the sport, and by the age of 14, she had joined the hunting party of her tribe as a jockspur, a long-distance shooter, so like a sniper. During the Black Year of 396, when the Dark tribe began their rampage through southeastern Valenwood with the aid of powers from the Somerset Isle, Lady Binak fought the futile battle to keep her tribe's land. I killed somebody for the first time when I was 16, she says now. I don't remember it very well. He or she was just a blur in my horizon where I aimed my bow. I meant no more to me than shooting animals. I probably killed 100 people like that during the summer and fall. I didn't really feel like a killer until that wintertide, when I learned what it was like to look into the man's eyes as he spilled his blood. I was a scout from the Darek tribe who surprised me. Oh, sorry, it was a scout who surprised me when I was on camp watch. We surprised each other, I suppose. I had my bow at my backside and I just panicked, trying to string an arrow when he was half a yard away from me. It was the only thing I knew to do. Of course, he struck first with his blade, and I just fell back in shock. You always remember the mistakes of your first victim. His mistake was assuming because he had drawn blood and I had fallen, that I was dead. I rushed at him the moment he turned from me towards the sleeping camp of my tribesmen. He was caught off guard, and I wrestled his blade away from him. I don't know how many times I stabbed him. By the time I stopped, when the next watch came relieved me, my arms were black and blue with the strain. There was not a solid piece of him left. I literally cut him into pieces. You see, I had no concept of how to fight or how much it took to kill a man. Lady Binak, aware of this deficiency in her education, began teaching herself swordsmanship at once. You can't learn how to use a sword in Valenwood, she says, which is to say, Bosmer can't use blades. But we're largely self-taught. As much as it hurt when my tribe found itself homeless, pushed to the north, it did have one good aspect. It afforded me the opportunity to meet Redguards. Studying all manners of weapon wielding under the tutelage of Warde Akor, Lady Binak excelled. She became a freelance adventurer, traveling through the wilds of southern Hammerfell and northern Valenwood, protecting caravans and visiting dignitaries from the various dangers indigenous to the population. Unfortunately, before we were able to pursue her story of her early years any further, Lady Binak was called away on urgent summons from the Emperor. Such is often the case with the Imperial Guard, and in these troubled times perhaps more so than the past. When I tried to contact her for another talk, her servants informed me that their mistress was in Skyrim. Another month passed, and when I visited her suite, I was told she was in High Rock. To her credit, Lady Binak actually sought me out for our second interview on sun's dusk of that year. I was in a tavern in the city called the Blood and Rooster when I felt her hand on my shoulder. She sat down at the rude table and continued her tale as if it had never been interrupted. She returned to the theme of her days as an adventurer and told me about her first time she ever felt confident with a sword. I owned at that time an enchanted daikatana, quite a good one, of Daedric metal. It wasn't an original Akaviri, not even of design. I didn't have that kind of money, but it served my primary purpose of delivering as much damage with as little effort as possible. The Corps had taught me how to fence, but when faced with a life or death situation, I always fell back in the old overhand wallop. A pack of orcs had stolen some gold from the local chieftain in Meditia, and I went looking for them in one of the ubiquitous dungeons that dot the countryside in that region. I don't know what that word means. There were the usual rats and giant spiders, and I was enough of a veteran by then to dispatch them with relative ease. The problem came when I found myself in a pitch-black room, and all around me I heard the grunts of orcs nearing in. I waved my sword around me, connecting with nothing, hearing the footsteps coming even nearer. Somehow I managed to hold back my fear and to remember that simple exercise Master Akor had taught me. I listened, stepped sideways, swung, twisted, stepped forward, swung, circled, turned around, sidestepped, and swung. My instinct was right. The orcs had gathered in a circle around me, and when I found a light, I saw that they were dead. All dead. That's when I focused on my study of swordplay. I'm stupid enough to require a near-death experience to see the practical purposes, you see. Lady Bennock spent the remainder of the interview responding in her typically blunt way to the veracity of various myths that surrounded her and her career. It was true that she became the master of the Valenwood Fighters Guild after winning a duel with the former master who was a stooge of the Imperial Battle Mage, the traitor Yagar Tharn. It was not true that she was the one responsible for Valenwood Guild's disintegration 2 years later. Actually, the membership in the Valenwood chapter was healthy, but in Tamriel all over the mood was not conducive for the continued existence of a non-partisan organization, freelance warriors. It was true that she first came to the Emperor's attention when she defended Queen Akarithai of Sentinel from a Breton assassin. It was not true that the assassin was hired by someone in the High Court of Daggerfall, at least she says wryly. That has never been proven. It was also true that she married her former servant, Odeken, after he had been in her service for 11 years. No one knows how to keep my weaponry honed like he does, she says. It's a practical business. I either had to give him a raise or marry him. The only story I asked her that she would neither admit nor refute was the one about Calix's, the Emperor's bastard. When I brought up the name, she shrugged, professing no knowledge of the affair. I pressed on with the details of the story. Calix's, though not in line for succession, had been given the archbishopric of the one, a powerful position in the imperial city, and indeed all over Tamriel where that religion is honored. Whispering began immediately that Calix's believed that the gods were angered with the secular governments of the Tamriel and the Emperor specifically. It was even said that Calix's advocated full-scale rebellion to establish a theocracy over the Empire. It is certainly true, I pressed on, that the Emperor's relationship with Calix's had become very stormy, and that legislation had been passed to limit the Church's authority. That is up until the moment when Calix's disappeared suddenly without notice to his closest of friends. Many said that Lady Bennock and the Imperial Guard assassinated the Archbishop Calix's in the sacristy of his church. The date usually given was 29th of sun's dusk, 3E 498. Of course, responds Lady Bennock with one of her mysterious grins. I don't need to tell you that the Imperial Guard's position is as protector of the throne, not assassins. But surely no one was more trusted than the Guard for such a sensitive operation, I say carefully. Lady Bennock acknowledges that, but merely says that such details of her duties must remain secret as a matter of Imperial security. Unfortunately, her ladyship had to leave early next morning, as the Emperor had business down south. Of course, I couldn't be told more specifics. She promised to send me word when she returned so we could continue our interview. As it turned out, I had business of my own in Somerset Isle, compiling a book in the Zijik order, It was therefore with surprise that I met Ladyship 3 months later and first told, who managed to get away from their respective duties to complete our third and final interview on a walk along the Deceto, the great river that passes through the royal parts of the city. Steering away from questions of her recent duties and assignments, which I had guessed rightly she was loath to answer, I returned to the subject of sword fighting. Frandor Hundin, she says, lists 38 grips, 750 offensive and 1800 defensive positions, and nearly 9,000 moves essential to the swordmaster. The average hack and slasher knows one grip, which he uses primarily to keep from dropping his blade. He knows one offensive position, facing his target, and one defensive position, fleeing. Of the multitudinous rhythms and inflections of combat, he knows less than one. The ways of the warrior were never meant to be the easiest path. The archetype of the adept fighter is as solidly ingrained as that of the brilliant wizard and the shrewd thief. It was not always so. The figure of the philosopher swordsman, the blade-wielding artist, are creatures of the past, together with the sword singer of the Red Guards, who was said to be able to create and wield a blade with but the power of his mind. The future of the intelligent blade wielder looks bleak in comparison to the glories of the past. Now wanting to enter interviews on a sour note, I pressed Lady Elena Binock for advice for young blade swingers just beginning their career. When confronted with the wizard, she says, throwing petals of cantleaf into the Deceto. Oh, sorry about that. When confronted with the wizard, she says, throwing the petals of cantleaf into the Deceto, close the distance and hit him hard. Well, viewer, that was my first episode of the Skyrim bonus missions. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I'm not the best at pronunciating stuff, and I'm definitely not the best storyteller, but, you know, it's just to learn the lore and learn some extra stuff about Skyrim, so hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you in the next bonus episode, or in the main Let's Play.